Yeah, just quick update, and then you guys can fire away. Guess we talked 2 weeks ago. Not a lot's changed since then. Just kind of one step closer to the beginning of the season. We do have a closed door scrimmage, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. So obviously everyone's looking forward to that, myself included. Guys been working hard, pretty healthy for the most part. Nothing that other than Jackson's deal, nothing new. Couple minor things that are just typical of practices, but nothing that should impact us once we start playing games. So that's all I kind of got from an update standpoint.
So at this point in the season, is games the thing you need to see next to get a true judgment? Is that where you're at?
Yeah. Obviously, like I mentioned last time, there's only so much you can improve on in practice when you're playing against yourselves, and that's where I think growth. There's like different periods of growth, but the next part of growth for us is actually getting out there and putting your whole group together and playing against somebody else and getting exposed a little bit, and you can find out a lot about yourself in those moments. That it is no matter how forward thinking you try to be with situations and things that you try to put your team in practice situations through, trying to visualize what's going to happen until you get out there in a game. You're always amazed when you look back at the course of the season that you end up, sometimes you get out there, you end up playing with a lineup that you've never even practiced with before because of foul trouble, because of maybe some injuries, because of a myriad of reasons. So yeah, you just need to. It's time. I know our guys are ready, and I am too.
As a coach, what are the things that maybe you don't know until you get to game situation? You said rotations that maybe haven't worked, but are there other things?
Yeah, just especially in this time period when you just haven't been in the foxhole, so to speak. In our situation, we've only two guys, Jasper and Brennan, that you've actually been in game huddles and game situations. And again, you try to create adverse situations in practice. You try to put them in situations where they have to come through adversity together. But there's nothing like actually being in a game against someone else and finding yourself down or up big, or just all the ebbs and flows of games, and how can you stay together in those moments, and what little types of leadership each guys can exhibit in those type of situations. You don't really get that until you play.
Ross, what do you think about the ball in at Woodburn event, and have you ever done something like that before?
Yeah, we have. Like I know everyone's looking forward to that. And it should be a great opportunity. Again, just kind of one step closer to the season, and something that's unique that can tie the community and the program together, and get an opportunity to get those guys out in front of the community of Morgantown and get a chance to meet more people. And we have our exhibition 2 days after that, so I think it's should be an exciting event.
So you have a young core of freshmen, some that have reclassified. What have you seen from them going forward here in the preseason?
Yeah, they again they're willing learners. Mentally, they're mature. Amir and DJ, and even Jaden and Evans, but Amir and DJ specifically. Again, their ability to process information, take coaching, not take it personal, learn from it, and improve has been good. And they're still, again, obviously learning the physicality and the speed, but both those guys have really good high IQs, and both of them are like extremely coachable. And mentioned to our team all the time, and those guys, like listening is a skill. Just like running is and jumping is, and like listening, the ability to understand what the coach is asking you to do and then go apply it on the floor is actually a skill itself. And both of those guys are like really good listeners.
When it comes to closed door scrimmages, preseason exhibitions, how much do you typically kind of, I guess, pre-script, talk with the opposing coach, like, hey, we want to work on this, what do you want to work on, versus let the guys go out and kind of see what happens?
Yeah, both. When you have a closed door scrimmage, you'll kind of set the parameters for what you want to do leading into that. If you want to, everybody approaches it different. Some people play a 20-minute half, reset the score, play another 20-minute half, and then maybe play some 10-minute segments after that for some of the lower minute guys. Some people like to do special situations before. Maybe you have a zone segment. Maybe you have a baseline out of bounds segment. So we haven't quite really. We're going to have a closed door scrimmage with Maryland, but we haven't quite discussed exactly how we want to do those things from a parameter standpoint. But the best thing is just getting out there and playing against somebody else. And like anything, you anticipate there's going to be some good, there's going to be some bad, and there's going to be some ugly. That's just the way it is. And so. What you want to see, what I would like to see more than anything for that game specifically is just, our team supporting each other, staying together, playing through the negative plays because they're going to happen. That would be, at the height of what I would like to see, knowing that there's going to be a lot go wrong, the first time out.
Are we still doing that top secret, can't talk about it? No info, is that still a rule?
No, they've changed that. Again, I haven't discussed it with Coach Williams yet exactly what we want to do from a information releasing it, other than just acknowledging it that it is happening. But they have changed that rule, and you can talk about them. You can put the box scores out there. I can discuss post that who played well, who didn't, what I liked. So like anything, there ain't a lot of secrets anymore.
Speaking of secrets, how have you gone about packaging your visit weekend when you have recruits come in?
A lot of it is just mainly when they can do it. You communicate. I mean, we're pretty flexible with our dates, and so really you're just trying to figure out what works for the family, what works for the student athlete themselves, and when can you get everybody that you need to get here together on the same weekend. If it aligns with a football weekend, I always think that's a plus, but that's not always going to be the case.
As far as like a schedule and itinerary, are you still working that out a little bit, like trial and error? Like, are there certain parts of town or campus or program that are must features and things you think they need to see, or is it different from player to player? Maybe an older player has seen
a little different from player to player. It's going to be, in the spring when you're doing like transfer portal recruiting, it really is like speed dating, and you're to the point with the older players. I mean, they want to be in, they want to be out, they want to see the gym, they want to know their basketball role. The other parts of how it can work for them, and then they're not too interested in seeing much. With your freshmen, they're gonna want to see a little more campus. They're gonna want to, see where they're gonna live specifically, and that would be, to me, that's the bigger difference between the two. Really when you're talking about the transfer portal in the spring, I mean, most of those visits are under 24 hours to 36 hours. I mean, they're in and out.
Have you highlighted things that you're like, I got to show them this, or they might want to see this, or it's a sunny day, we should bring them here, or are you still figuring that out a little bit?
Not necessarily figuring it out. I mean, I think, basketball players want to see, the practice facility, which I think we have, one of the nicest, if not the nicest practice facility in the country. The Coliseum definitely still, if you haven't walked into that building, for anybody's time, the first time they walk into that, there's definitely a wow factor when you walk into there and see those spaces. And, we usually hit we're going to go to Oliverio's probably for dinner one night and show them around Morgantown a little bit, show them where they live, and have them meet with some people on campus. But outside of that, if you don't have if you have a football weekend, obviously you're doing that, but you don't have a lot of you really don't have a lot of time, as much as you would think to fill it with anything else other than the basketball part of it.
Speaking of recruiting, do you have a kind of a plan, a structure right now, how you want to build next year's roster? I know this year hasn't started, but do you have a certain amount of high school kids compared to transfer portal guys, or is it really just find the best available?
Some of it's a little bit of both. You're always going to be flexible. I still think it is important to have carryover from year to year. So your freshmen are still going to be very important. If you look at the teams that have had a lot of success specifically in this league, again, you look at like the Houston. One of the things they've done best to their credit is they have retained their players, and they've retained good players, and so they have established a culture in that regard. So I do think it's important to add a couple freshmen, to each class, and hopefully you can retain them, and so you're not having to start completely over from a culture standpoint year in, year out.
Coach, just for, obviously fans and, haven't really seen you in action yet, how would you describe Coach Hodge's coaching style, philosophy, theories, strategy, or?
Yeah, that was a lot there. you specifically, what would you like to start with, and then we can. Can be.
Yeah.
It certainly can be. Try my best to reflect what you would like from your team, which is a next play mentality, which is hard. I mean, it's like very easy for coaches to preach to your team, like, hey, you got to move on to the next play, and you got to move on. But sometimes coaches aren't the best examples of, following that model. So, try to do that. I think trying to think as clearly as you can in chaotic moments is important. But there's also like an emotion. There's an emotion component to the game. It is an emotional, game. It is a fiery game, and I think you got to embody that part too. And just like tell our teams, you want to play with emotion. You just don't want to be emotional. And again, try to embody that.
You say referees like working with a referee in a Coach Hodge game? I mean,
you'd probably have to ask them, But I would certainly hope, I would hope that if I am having a negative reaction in a game, I would hope that the official in their mind would think like, man, maybe I did miss this one because he's not someone that's just over here berating us on every play and complaining about every foul call. That's kind of what I hope, that if he's upset or maybe we really did miss this one, and because he doesn't do that very often, that you'd like to have some weight to that, and not just overreacting to every call that doesn't go your way or goes your way.
And then do you with your starting fives, do you mix and match, or do you like to be the guy that keeps the same starting five, or does that maybe change due to circumstances?
It can change. I like to try to keep a group starting if possible. Each year is different. When we were at North Texas, when I was an assistant, 2 years in a row we had the same starting five from start to finish. One year it was like us and Furman maybe, and then the other year it was us and somebody else, but we were the only two teams in the country that had day one all starting five to the very end. So I do think there's something like from a continuity and a rhythm standpoint. We haven't always started our so-called best players. Brennan didn't start for us last year. He was first team All-League in the American. So it is important to get off to good starts, but there's a 40-minute game, and you're going to sub. So sometimes it's trying to figure out what combinations work well together, knowing that you can't just, we're not going to hockey sub. So you're not going to like sub five in and bring another five out. So you're trying to factor all that into determining who starts. And, I sell that in recruiting. Like, to me, I know players like to start, parents love to see their kids' names called and do the high fives and any other thing they got going during the lineup intros, but in reality, it's not that important to me personally.
The reason why I ask is because of Brennan. Obviously, like you said, the honors he won. What made him such a good off-the-bench player, and do you kind of see him still in that role?
No, I would imagine he will transition into a starting role. Last year it gave us the ability, because he's so versatile, and so you could sub him in. You could sub him in at the 4, and you could go a little bigger. You could sub him in at the 5 and go a little smaller, kind of depending on what the game needed. It kind of gave you a way to play differently when he was on the floor. And that's what you love about his heart. I mean, he never once came to me and said, "Hey, like, I want to start." Sure. Now there were some precedents there, specifically because we had always had a really good player, that Tyler Perry, that played at Kansas State. You guys may remember when he transferred there, he didn't start for us his first year. He was first team all league and came off the bench. Jason Edwards came off the bench originally. So like Brennan had kind of saw that and knew, and I'm pretty open with all these guys in the recruiting process. To me, it's just not that big of a deal, because you're trying to figure out what combinations through the course of a game can play together, knowing that fatigue is going to be a factor, foul trouble is going to be a factor. You'd like to have a certain amount of shooting out on the floor at all times. You'd like to have a certain amount of ball handling on the floor at all times. So if you started all your best ball handlers, they're going to have to come out of the game at some point in time. So, but that speaks to a lot of, to Brennan's heart, and never came up one time.
Strategy question. Up 3 late. Are you a foul guy or let it play out guy?
I'm not married to either. I'm not like a hardcore. I know some people are. I think there's a lot of factors that you could consider. Like, are you at home? Are you on the road? What type of foul trouble are you in? What type of foul trouble are they in? Can you rebound? Do you feel comfortable rebounding, knowing that if you foul them, they're probably going to make one or miss one? Can you rebound the miss? We practice it, and I've practiced both situations, and ironically, I think we've only been, in the course of this is like 23 years in college coaching, and I think I've actually only been in that situation about 5 or 6 times. A couple times as a head coach, and then also getting feedback from the players. What do they feel comfortable doing? And we've been really good defensively. Historically we've been elite, and so those guys typically wanted to say, "No, we'll get a stop." So.
Along the lines of philosophy, what got you into being so strongly in emphasizing defense?
So the coaches that I played for, Coach Bishop, Leonard Bishop was my high school coach, and he was, committed to playing, man-to-man defense. And then when I went to junior college, I played for Bill Foy, who was an Indiana grad, and so he went to Indiana University when Bob Knight was there. So, zone was like a 4-letter expletive to him, and so, and then. As it progressed, just me as a player, not being like extremely athletic. Laterally, I was okay, but I wasn't a runner, jumper, and I had to have a certain level of like grit and fight to even get on the floor. And so a lot of it was just those are the coaches that I worked for and played for: Sam Walker, Bill Foy, Leonard Bishop, Coach Eustace. That was kind of their identity, and married with, again, how I kind of had to compete to even get on the floor is just kind of the way it happened.
How about the attitude that defense creates on a team?
Yeah, just from personality wise, I wasn't the most talented player, so if I was going to play, I had to like compete and scrap and fight and claw, and you hope your teams kind of take on that personality and get a belief that you're not always going to shoot the ball well. especially on the road. And typically if you're gonna win this league, like we've talked about it a lot, you go back and you look at historically, like the team that has the best defense in this league typically wins this league.
One final question. At your size and with the athletic ability you described you having, why basketball rather than?
That's a great question. So I grew up outside of Dallas, and I played baseball and football like most kids in Texas. At that point in time, basketball hadn't really exploded like it recently has. I mean, I didn't even have a little league basketball. There was around where I was. I didn't play an organized basketball game until the 8th grade, but just loved the team ethos of being out there together. Fell in love with the game, process of getting better, and finding ways to make each other better. And I love those other sports too. Still to this day, I mean, I love football, love baseball, but both those sports are harder to make your teammates better by your presence on the floor. Where I think basketball, maybe even soccer a little bit, one player on the floor can really influence and impact an entire game. In basketball in a ways that, unless it's the guy on the mound in baseball, I mean, he can dictate an entire game. But so I think it was just that, and just the feeling of taking you and 4 other guys and seeing if you can go beat 5 other guys and finding out a way, and just really enjoyed it.
I don't know if you can talk about it, but Chance Moore, what does the practice look like for him before the season starts?
Yeah, same. No different. Yeah, we're not approaching it any different than we are with any other player, at all. And he does have the ability to play in the closed door scrimmage and our exhibition, and we plan on playing on both of those.
Game strategy thing. Seen head coaches that will do all the substitutions themselves. Sometimes they have an assistant that really is designated as the guy who does that. Which way do you do it?
A combination of both. We'll talk pretty extensively going into the game about, again, just kind of what our rotations are, when we would like to sub guys initially. That you're usually trying to script those first couple. Again, we sub pretty quick. Usually the first dead ball or very close thereafter, I like to get guys into the game and get those guys used to hey, you're going to be out here, you're going to be playing really hard for short bursts, and then we'll get somebody else out there. But yeah, Coach Hurl and Coach Estelle we've been together, going on 3 years now, so we have a pretty good ethos of when it's time. And I have an opinion, but I'm not necessarily doing it all by myself. But we'll talk about it as much as we can before it happens, so you're not getting caught in the moment unsure of what you want to do. Hey, what's our best defensive lineup? What's our best offensive lineup? What happens if we have to go small? What happens if so-and-so gets in foul trouble? Yeah, injuries throw it all into whack, as we know. Those are the hardest to prepare for while the game's happening. But that's a good question. But
Coach, talking about your defense, Honor was in here a couple weeks ago, and obviously he's been this offensive player for 3 years. Hasn't really been asked to play great defense. So how do you take that and mold it into what you're looking for?
Yeah, by being honest with them initially, and again, a guy like Honor or any of these guys, if you want to play at the highest level of basketball, you're going to have to defend, unless there's not even really any unlesses, but especially if you're not, Luka Doncic or but even those guys, as they get older, Steph Curry's one early in his career. You saw, you could kind of be a target and they'd seek and destroy him a little bit out there on defense. And he's took pride as it's happen. So I think explaining to those guys that if you want to play at the highest level of basketball, like, you're going to have to be able to hold up your own on the defensive end of the floor, and then just getting them to buy into that, which they all have, because they know. I mean, they know before they come here. It's not like I said, there are no secrets, you know. So and people have tried to use that negatively, like, against us, you know, like, well, why would you go play for him? He's a defensive coach, you're an offensive guy. But again, that speaks to, in my opinion, to the player's maturity of knowing, like, okay, well, yeah, I do want to play the highest level of professional basketball, what that can be, and I'm not going to be able to achieve that if I'm just a pillow out there on defense, or a cone. You know, you got to be able to guard somebody, you know. And to those guys' credit, they know it, and they've bought into the challenge, and they are being asked to play at a level defensively they haven't done in their life.
So how is his defensive
Yeah,
skills coming along?
yeah, it's coming, you know. And so you gotta merge all of it. Like, you know, there's the first thing is, like, this is the level of effort that's required to be a good defensive player, and then you got to merge that into, like, this is the level of effort combined with the level of intelligence that you need to know, and understanding, and IQ. And does no good if you're playing really hard but you're out there fouling people 37 feet from the basket, or getting straight line driven. Like, that isn't it. But it's also not standing 5 feet off of people, letting them do whatever they want to do. So yeah, he's bought into it. He's improving, still get better, like a lot of us. But the first step is them wanting to be a good defender. And typically, if someone wants to do that and they really want to get it, they usually get it.
Ross, now that you've had him for a little bit, is Treysen's offense as good as advertised?
Yeah, I mean, he has with his size, he has the ability to make shots, and he can get on rolls. He's getting better. He's a good passer, but he's improving in that area, you know, and he's just trying to find that happy medium now of, like, how, you know, being aggressive, you know, within the framework of what we're doing, but, you know, not just jacking either. Not that he's a jacker. Like, I tell, like, even today, I think he comes in here, but, like, I'm usually having to tell him a couple times in practice, like, dude, just shoot the ball. You know, like, you're turning down good shots, and I want him. You want guys like Honor. You want those guys, if they can shoot it, you don't want them turning down shots.
Speaking of Honor, obviously he led the country in threes. He also led the country in minutes last year.
Yeah.
How valuable is that?
Yeah, he's an incredibly gifted athlete as it pertains to he doesn't get tired. You know, his motor runs. He's in great condition, and just naturally he has a big gas tank. Doesn't run out of gas.
The old adage used to be tired legs misses shots.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply to him?
No, I mean, he didn't get tired.
Ross, as you go throughout the course of the preseason, do you have certain markers week to week of where you want to see the team, both individual evaluations and collectively?
Not something tangible, probably. You know, not something that you could quantify on like a stat sheet. It's more just, I think, like, visually and I don't even know if auditorily is a word, but is that a word? Yeah, all right. But it more just like visually and then what you're hearing your team saying is good barometers. You know, if you can, and it has. There's been more times where I've mentioned to one of our assistants, or, you know, even like Matt Dinello, our trainer, and Coach Martinez, which those guys are awesome, but they're awesome in practice too. And there's been a couple times, you know, within this last week or so that I've went over to them. I was like, man, that kind of looks like it should look, you know, and that sounds like it should sound from a communication standpoint, from an effort standpoint, from a positioning standpoint. So I think that's kind of the markers that you're looking at now. Now, we talked about earlier, when you go play against somebody else, all that gets flipped on the head a little bit, because you do get used to playing against yourself and where your offense is and positionally where you're going to be in relation to what that's going. We play against our scout team. They do a great job every day of trying to emulate different actions that we may see that we don't run. But again, until you're out there playing against somebody else that's doing that every day, that'll be the next marker, you know.
Your high school coach, is his son the SFA women's coach?
Yes.
Who replaced Kellogg?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Small world. All right.
Yeah. So Coach Bishop was my high school coach. I think I've mentioned this before. Coach Kellogg was a Division III player in Texas. He played at Austin College, which was in Sherman. And I played in Commerce. I played at Commerce. But when we were both in college, during the summer, we would work basketball camps for the Dallas Mavericks. And so we worked, Coach Kellogg and I worked camps together when we were players in college for the Mavericks. And it would be for 8 weeks in the summer. Each week was at a different location in the Metroplex. And each camp would be at, one South Garland High School, then Arlington High School, and that would be for 8 weeks. So we did that. And then Coach Bishop, my high school coach, his son Lynn, was Coach Kellogg's assistant associate head coach. And then when Coach Kellogg got here, he got the head coaching job. So it's an incestuous little group, It is. It really is.
Brenton was a part of 2 really good teams in Florida, and then it was hard to crack that rotation.
Yeah.
Did you know what you had in him, or was it kind of projecting a little bit that if we do this right, there's something there that just hasn't come to the surface?
Yeah, a little bit of it was projecting. A little of it was seeing his growth and the opportunities that he was given that year. He didn't play much on the Final Four team. The next year, he did start playing a little bit more. It was lower minutes. And he actually made some really big plays in 2 games against us. One at our place, he had a big corner 3 to kind of seal the game late. And then in the conference tournament, they beat us, and we couldn't keep him off the glass in the first half. And I remember talking to my staff, like, man, you would love to have a player with that level of length and versatility. And then Coach May and I are good friends, and just even talking to him about who Brendan was and areas he needed to grow in, and again, we anticipated him being a good player for us, but I don't know if you ever really think like, oh, this will be a first-team All-League player, or this will be, but we did see his growth from year 1 to year 2, knew how well he was being coached down there. Coach May does a great job, had a great understanding of how to play offensive basketball, and then knew he could be a defensive weapon with his length and athleticism and versatility.